Where's Lucy? Luce? She was just right there. She's escaped on me. Good morning, jurors. Hello, good morning. Happy, what is it? Tuesday? Today, Tuesday? It's like the Friday-est Tuesday ever. Good morning. It is good to see y'all. I got beach cam back up for you. I actually was struggling with that. That's why I'm like 2 or 3 minutes late, because I was actually struggling with it, trying to get it set up. Because I don't want to put it in the main window where I usually have it, because I have the window open right now, because it's like I got that nice breeze coming in. So I didn't want to put it right in the window just in case. So I had to put it in a different window, and I was trying to get it set up so you can see there's like a some kind of glare on it and stuff. But you got a view of the freaky tiki, which is all that matters. So good morning to you. There's Lucy girl. Hi, big girl. Your friends are waiting on you. Her little nub is just a wagon. Good morning. Let's say hi to the first in the tailgate. Good morning. Good morning I'm here. I'm here as always here for the tailgate. Stacy S is good at showing up for tailgate too. Be on it, doggone it. And Creaja 5 EJF. Good morning. Love it. No action in the freaky tiki this morning, actually, which I'm okay with, to be perfectly honest with you. Now when I walk by there, I'm like, maybe I'll just keep my distance and carry like Lysol, like, spray it down. But I also woke up a little bit later this morning. I stayed up real late last night working on the podcast. Did not get done with it yesterday. The last 2 days have been days. So I am behind on everything. I got a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. So I did not get done. I stayed up real late, and then I slept in till like 6:15 this morning, which never happens for me. So technically there may have been some freaky tiki action this morning, but I normally wake up before the sun rises, and this morning I did not. I woke up with the sunrise. So they may have already got out of there, or they may have been vacationers and they've gone home, or they may have realized that sand in your undercarriage ain't all it's cracked up to be. So maybe they, decided to cut that out. Maybe, who knows? But anyway, good morning. For those of y'all who, Nikki says, I was up late. I was in bed like 3.5 hours ago. That is the story of my life. I hope this doesn't do this all day again. I average about 3 or 4 hours of sleep per night, unfortunately. But it could be worse. I don't sleep much. I wish I could. But in order for me to get like a full 8 hours of sleep, I would have to go to bed about 12 hours ahead of time. I'd have to be in bed for 12 hours. Dang, aliens are back. I don't know why. I don't know if it's internet or StreamYard. My internet shows that it's fine. I have fiber internet, and I have 2 things that I can choose from. I have because we have for condo owners, we have our own separate one for our specific condo. And then there's one for the renters so that they don't have the main password. And I can log on to either of them, and both of them show like really crazy high speeds. But then my StreamYard will start doing this little thing where it tells me that I'm not stable. And look, I agree. I'm not stable at this point in my life, but my internet should be. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Indy Cindy, member for 5 whole months. It's a wonderful day. Good morning, everyone. It is a wonderful day. Good morning. I am glad to have y'all here. It's been aliens. There we go. Maybe that's better. It's been a doozy of a couple days. Oh wait, hold on. Hollyberry, I don't know if it's the same couple every morning because I didn't look close enough. But I've only seen him the 2 mornings, to be fair. Like, I've only seen him the 2 mornings. And I am hoping that they were just vacationers and they've gone. Liz K says, has everyone recovered from the 10K celebrations yet? I hope so. The 10K party was amazing. I appreciate everybody that came. And I could not keep up with comments, especially having like, it's really hard for me to keep up with comments, especially when we have multiple people on the show, with us too. Cause my StreamYard is doing all kinds of funky stuff. I'm trying to, talk to them and do comments. And so I know I missed a lot and I truly apologize. I tried my best. It was the overwhelming love that y'all showed and meant so much to us. And I truly, truly appreciate it. It was, I love y'all. I love y'all. But I know I missed some comments and I'm sorry. I do try my best, y'all. I really do. But it's when it's stuff like that and there's so much happening, it is difficult. So if I missed your stuff, I'm so sorry. I did try my best. But I'm really excited. And for the people who won stuff, my week is so packed full between this and the podcast stuff that and I think I had said this Sunday night too. I will make it to the post office. I won't be able to make it there till Saturday. So I will try to get everything, all the gifts and stuff like that mailed out on Saturday. I'm going to work on that this weekend. So we can try to get everything out. If I don't get it out Saturday, then I'll at least get it in the mailbox Saturday so that it'll go out, the next day. So, but it was awesome. It was just overwhelming. It's one of those moments. Like I'm so grateful for how everything has happened.
Check. It's not the biggest deal in the world. This has gone on a while as it is. So another minute's not going to make any difference.
Judge coming in hot.
I was just raising with Ms. Murad the state's motion, or at least I thought you indicated you were going to file a motion in regard to additional opinions that the defense was attempting to introduce via Dr. Rappa's testimony. Ms. Murad has indicated that she's not pursuing that anymore. So I just need to confirm that there's nothing for the court to decide in regard to that. Is that accurate? Okay. All right. Good enough then. All right. So you want to call your next witness and then so just for planning purposes, give me a little bit of idea of what we're looking at today. I'm assuming this witness up front, and then do you have any other witnesses besides the possibility of your client testifying this? Okay. It's been admitted into evidence already, or it's going to be part of it? 14 hours? All right. Do you know how much you do intend to play? Okay. All right. Yeah, I only asked not to infringe at all upon your defense, but only to get an idea as to what we're looking at in terms of logistics. Yeah. Be same type video that we've seen already? Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there may be objections, Your Honor. I was provided a list of what they intended to offer about probably 9:30 last night. Earlier, I was provided a list with 3,000 videos that was approximately 50 hours long. I started to go through that, but now it's my understanding that's no longer what they intend. And so I haven't had a chance to look at what they offer. That larger list did have things that the state would object to.
Okay.
So just so let Your Honor know, I haven't had a chance to look at this 14-hour video that they now have indicated they're going to enter.
So I'll address that when and if you raise it. So it sounds to me like, Ms. Murad, a reasonable shot of you resting today. Is it? All right. And are you going to make the decision as to whether your client's going to testify
It's been
before or after you
84
publish
years.
the videos? Okay. Okay. All right, good enough then. All right, I think we've addressed all the trial issues that I needed to address this morning. Anything else we need to address before we bring the jurors in? Use the mic, Mr. Sooner than later, we'll probably try to do it during the first break. Not the first break, but when we break for lunch, we'll spend a few minutes on that. Is there?
So for the parental defense, it's our position that that the burden of persuasion, that once we present it, just like a self-defense, it is upon the state's burden to unprove it or to disprove, and just like self-defense.
Is there a standard that addresses that? Because I really don't intend to depart from the standard if there's a standard.
Yeah. So the jury instruction actually,
Well, here's what we're going to do. I just wanted to know if there's an issue. I will address it then when I bring up the instructions for consideration. We'll probably do that at the lunch hour and take whatever time is necessary to do it then. But and then just be prepared to tell me if there's a standard instruction at that time, and then I'll hear argument on everything. All right. So, Ms. Murad, are you ready to call your next witness in? All right, you may do so. Let's go ahead and bring the jury out now.
Look, I just called for them about the aliens. So if they're about to reboot something, so if it kicks me off, I'll be right back. just hang out here. Talk amongst yourselves. They say like 51 hours or something.
All right.
Video. Oh, is that the Australian dude behind Mom? It looks like it, doesn't it? I can't tell.
All right, everyone may be seated. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, welcome back. I hope everyone had a good restful relaxation for the long holiday. I hope it was a long holiday for all of you. It was for the court. So with that being said, we are still in the defense portion of the case at this point. And with that, Ms. Murad, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense called
Okay.
Agent Chris Lowe. He was on here before.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Ms. Murad, you may begin at your convenience.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Agent Lowe. I know you've been here before, so I don't want to belabor your background, but could you restate your name for the record, please?
Yes, I am Christopher Lowe with Jupiter Police Department.
And in this particular case, you received a Dropbox link of the Ring camera videos from Ring. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I just wanted to clarify a few things for the jury regarding that Ring camera.
Yes.
So it's my understanding that some of the videos from the living room are missing. Is that correct?
I cannot confirm that there's any missing videos.
Okay. We don't have any videos after January 9th of videos from the living room, correct?
Within the folder, I'm going to notate the
Go
folder
ahead.
name. Folder 24738902, which is a depiction of the living room. the files encompass January 5th through January 9th.
Okay. And of course, the jury has seen videos from January 5th all the way to January 28th. So it's fair to say that from January 10th to January 28th, there are no videos from the living room, correct?
As provided by Ring, correct.
Have you had an opportunity to view at least one of those cameras from the Ring camera that was placed in the living room?
Yes,
Okay. So when you look out into that camera, you see the living room in front, correct?
correct.
It's kind of like behind a TV, it seems.
It's in a corner.
Okay. So in front of it is like a sofa. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
And then the kitchen is behind it, correct?
yes.
And then sort of off to the right, you see the dining room table.
Okay, I can agree to the sofa, the kitchen.
Okay. And do you recall if you can also see the dining room table from that angle?
I don't recall that portion.
Okay. Is it fair to say that no other Ring camera angle shows you the living room, kitchen, and dining room table other than that one?
Of what I observed, that's correct.
I also want to talk about, because the state played a lengthy video with the epoch time and UTC time. Could you explain again to this jury? So my understanding is that the file names provided in that Dropbox are, for the most part, a series of numbers. Is that right?
That's correct.
And those series of numbers are indicative of something called epoch time.
Yes.
And could you explain to the jury again how you get from that file name to the date and time?
All right. So in regards to the Unix epoch time that I had previously spoken about, that number itself is a unit of time starting from January 1st, 1970, and it can be notated in seconds or milliseconds. And you can take that number, place it into just a simple converter online, and it'll produce the UTC time, which you can then convert to the Eastern Standard Time.
Understood. So the video that the jury saw, there was a montage of sort of a number of videos from inside of Ronan's room. Those were in UTC time. What is the difference between UTC time and Eastern time?
So for the time in which we're concerned, being in January, it would be a difference of 5 hours for Eastern Standard Time.
So if something is, let's say, 4:35 p.m. UTC, what is it in Eastern time?
It would be 11:30.
So if Ronan's getting into bed at 4:30 UTC time, that's actually 5 hours later. Or I'm sorry, 5 hours earlier.
Earlier, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the Eastern time is earlier.
Yes.
Okay, understood. So the bed example was not a great one. Prior to this, did I give you an example of a file number in this case to convert into UTC time and Eastern time?
Yes.
Okay. And was that file number 164-138-414-4000?
Yes, that's correct.
So how do we get from that to the UTC time and then to the Eastern?
So simply placing that number into the converter, as I mentioned, it produced a UTC time of 12:02 and 24 seconds PM. Then you just subtract you subtract 5 hours to get to 7:02 and 24 seconds.
Are there also file numbers that are not in epoch time?
Yes.
And those file numbers, I believe, start with like 70505.
Generally, yes, that's correct.
What unit of measurement are they in?
That's unknown to me.
Okay. And are those file numbers also indicative of a time and date?
Are those file numbers? Not that I know of.
Okay. Is there a process by which you can determine the time and date from those file numbers?
Yes.
What is that process?
So as I previously mentioned, there are 11 subfolders within that return from Ring. Okay. Within 6 of those subfolders, there's an individual file in each one. When that file is converted into an Excel format, it produces a timestamp associated with the files that begin in the 705. So a simple conversion into an Excel file provides the timestamps necessary to associate.
Thank you. All the videos that you were provided from Ring in that are, for the most part, I know there's some that aren't, in 60-second intervals, correct?
For the most part.
And it's fair to say that there's no video of sort of 24-hour monitoring of what's going on in the home. It's just sort of those 60-second spurts that we all have to piece together when there's movement.
Correct.
Do you know why from January 10th to January 28th, there are no videos of that living room Ring camera?
I do not.
Okay. And are you just relying on what Ring provided to you?
That's correct.
But it is fair to say that the living room camera prior to that did exist, right?
Correct. From what I received January 5th to the 9th.
And there's no video on the 9th, 8th, 7th, 6th of the Ferriters taking that down that you're aware of?
I did not review that camera in that specificity. I didn't review each
Okay.
of those videos. No.
Understood. No further questions for this
All
witness.
right, any cross, Ms. Coakley?
You don't know why there isn't additional videos, right?
Correct.
They could have turned off the camera, right?
There could be a number of reasons. Correct.
Then that's one of them, right? They could have turned it off, correct?
Correct.
They could have unplugged it.
That's possible.
Yeah. They could have, it could have just broken, correct?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
All right, any redirect?
Since it's movement activated, if they did come in and turn off the camera or take it out, you would expect to see movement there, right?
Objection as speculation.
Overruled.
That's possible to capture that video.
Okay. And in this particular case, Ms. Coakley gave you a number of options of it could have been this, it could have been that. It's fair to say you have no idea. You just have what you have from Ring.
Correct.
So you have no ability to say that the Ferriters turned that off, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, they didn't turn off any of the video in their son's own room, right? During that time period. There's no evidence of that.
I cannot determine whether or not a camera is turned off.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murad. Is this witness now excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, sir, that concludes your testimony, and you're excused from further proceedings in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Murad, I'll call your next witness, please.
Dr. Sheila Rappa.
Dr. Sheila Rappa. This is the doctor that they had in the. They had talked
And you're
about
doing the direct, Ms. Murad?
Yes, ma'am.
in some of their motions, having her come in. Good point. You can turn off the camera via the Ring app. Yeah, she's confusing the jurors, which is what that's what defense attorneys want to do. They want to confuse the confuse the jury. Good morning, all of those joining us. Hello, hello.
Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yeah, that's defense's job. They
All right,
want to
Ms.
try
Murad,
to
you may
create
begin at your
confusion,
convenience.
Thank you, Judge.
create
Good morning.
questions.
Good morning.
Could you introduce yourself to us, please?
Sure. My name is Sheila Rappa.
Dr. Rappa, what do you do for work?
I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist.
I want to start with your sort of experience. Can you take us through your educational experience to become a clinical and forensic psychologist?
Yes. So I received a bachelor's degree in psychology in the year 1990. I went on to get my master's at Obizu University in 1994. And then I completed my doctorate in 1999, also at Obizu University. I did my internship at Miami Children's Hospital. I did the inpatient and the outpatient unit. And I did my residency at Atlantic Shores Hospital. I was licensed in Florida at the year 2000.
When you talk about some of your sort of work experience, can you take us through specifically the experience that you've had working with children with severe sort of behavioral issues?
Sure. My first introduction to children with severe trauma or severe behavioral issues was right after I got my master's degree. I had to do clinical hours, and I did them at a place called Kids in Distress that is in Fort Lauderdale. At Kids in Distress, it's a not-for-profit, but they take in all types of children, normally children that have been removed from their homes due to severe neglect or any kind of childhood trauma. So Kids in Distress would have any children from birth, all the way up. The ones I worked with were probably up to the age of 13 at that time. So I did that for my clinical hours, and then they hired me. So I started working there, and I worked a lot with children at that facility that were just severely traumatized, had diagnosis of reactive attachment disorder, had diagnoses of PTSD, just different types of childhood disorders. When I did my internship, or when I chose what internship I wanted to do, I really did want to focus on children, and I wanted to focus on victims. So Miami Children's Hospital was available to me, and that's one of the places that I applied to do my internship and was accepted. Miami Children's Hospital at that time had an outpatient unit, and they also had a locked residential unit. So I not only saw the children that were on the outpatient unit and did therapy with family and children, a lot of trauma. Also, there were the children that were on the inpatient unit that were actually locked inside the psychiatric facility because they were a harm to themselves or others. After I finished my internship, I quickly, within probably a year, started working at Chrysalis Health. Chrysalis Health is a community mental health center, serves about 3,000 clients a week, so very busy mental health center. Best known in the community for working with trauma and children and adolescents that are exhibiting behavioral problems, PTSD, any type of diagnosis pretty much that you can imagine. When I started at Chrysalis, I started just doing therapy, doing assessments. And then as I continued to work at Chrysalis, I became the clinical director. And right before I left Chrysalis, within like 3 or 4 years, I was their chief clinical officer. That meant I had to oversee probably 200, maybe 250 therapists that were doing the work in the families, in the homes, with the children, with the traumatized individuals. I also had to do the clinical programming for our group homes. We had residential homes, which were group homes for adolescents that had kind of failed out of the foster care system. Nobody would take them, so they put them into our group homes. Severe behavioral disturbances, a lot of trauma there. And I oversaw all their clinical work for that. And then pretty much after that, I just continued with my private practice. I started a private practice quickly after I got licensed, and worked at Chrysalis, also did a little bit in my private practice, but eventually the private practice kind of took over, and now I'm in private practice full time, and I only do forensic work. No more clinical work for me.
How long in your career did you do clinical work? So when did you go full time into the forensic?
I did clinical work from 1995, probably until 2010, maybe.
So pretty recent.
Yeah.
That was your consistent practice, was doing clinical work. Is that fair to say?
It was. I really, really love the clinical work. I like being in the gutter kind of with the families and helping them figure things out, and with children. My practice just got too busy and I couldn't do clinical work. I couldn't maintain the consistency anymore.
What experience do you have working with parents of children who have sort of early life trauma and severe behavioral issues?
Most of the parents that I have worked with that if you're going to talk about really significant trauma or really significant abuse, the parents that I would most likely work with would be foster parents or adoptive parents. There's not a whole lot of biological parents that I had to work with where their children were very severely abused or neglected, although there have been some. But most of it is foster care people that get their foster care parents that get these children and don't know what to do, or adoptive parents that get these children and they really just don't know what to do.
Now, your doctorate is a PsyD, so you're a psychologist, correct?
Correct.
This jury heard from the state's expert, Wade Myers, who is a psychiatrist. Can you explain to us the difference between psychology and psychiatry?
Sure. So psychiatrists are medical doctors. They actually go to medical school, just like your PCP would have gone to. They go to medical school. And then after medical school, they decide that they're going to specialize in psychiatry. And so they do rotations and get training specifically in psychiatry. Psychiatrists are probably best known for giving medication. So they do a lot of medication management. They know what types of medication to give for what type of psychological disorder. And really, some psychiatrists do some therapy, but most psychiatrists really deal with medication and medication management. Psychologists are a PhD. Mine is a PsyD because I'm a doctor of psychology, but it's easier to understand as a PhD. So it's a doctorate that you earn, and you have to have your bachelor's in some sort of human behavior study. Then you would get your master's in psychology and then your doctorate in psychology. So you're studying human behavior throughout. And really, if you include your internship and your residency, getting your doctorate takes about 12 years. It took me about 12 years.
As a psychologist, assuming that you actually evaluate a patient, are you able to come to a diagnosis in the same way that a psychiatrist is?
We do the same things, except the psychologist will do psychological testing. Normally, psychiatrists do not do psychological testing. They might do screeners to kind of assess and see where they're at in terms of diagnosis. But psychologists do psychological testing. Other than that, pretty much we arrive to a diagnosis the same way.
In general, and we'll talk more specifically briefly, but sort of in general, what is psychological testing?
Psychological testing can encompass many different things. It can be educational testing. We want to see someone's IQ. We want to see their achievement, how they're doing in school. It can also be leaned toward figuring out if someone has a psychological disorder. Does somebody have depression or anxiety? Are they bipolar? Are they schizophrenic? Testing will help with that. It can also tell us personality makeup. How does this person function in the world around other people and function in general? So it really depends on your referral question, what types of testing that you're going to be doing, but there's a plethora of tests that we can give for all different types of things.
Those tests that you give, are they standardized and accepted in the community as being able to render, I guess, data that helps you determine those different things that you were talking about, like IQ? So if you're giving a test and some other psychologist is giving a test for the same thing, is it going to be the same test?
Yes.
Okay.
So the tests are standardized. The tests also have validity scales to make sure that you're not only giving the test reliably in the right way, but the test taker is taking them in a valid way. So these tests are more objective measures. It's not just, somebody sitting back and looking at a case and then giving a diagnosis, but the testing really helps solidify that diagnosis.
I want to turn our attention to this specific case now. So you were hired by my law firm in this case, is that correct?
Yes.
And you're being paid for your time at an hourly rate, is that
Yes,
correct?
That's correct.
Is that common in your field?
Yes.
Okay. Are experts normally reviewing materials and coming to court for free?
No.
Okay.
She's getting that part over
I
with.
want to
'cause
go
she
through
knows
what
they're
you
gonna ask.
reviewed in this case. Can you take the jury through that?
Sure, I can. I had to make a list because there's a lot.
Oh.
All right. So here are the records that I reviewed in this case. I had Ronan's early childhood records. I had photos of him as a child, and he had scabies on his body.
Sustained. I've seen your objection as she's testifying from the page in front of her.
No,
Yep.
I'm like already getting a little bit anxious because I don't like victim blaming. And I don't want her to get up here and say that screaming and cussing at that child and locking him in a box was the proper way to handle any issues he may have had. So I'm like mentally preparing myself for whatever she's about to say. Mentally preparing myself. And I've seen, I don't know if y'all don't follow the 13th Juror Twitter. Cajun does a great job with the Twitter page. And I get a lot of my news from our 13th Juror Twitter page. But she had pulled some stuff from like some of the documents and stuff from this trial and posted on the Twitter page. And a lot of the stuff that they were looking at like this, they had a lot of stuff in there about like that they were trying to get in. And then that kind of made me start looking into some of it this weekend. I started, which is, I did not dive into everything because Lord, there are so many papers and documents in this, but I looked through some of it, and they talked a lot about, the things that like his behavior problems and some of the things that he did, and it's a lot of like it's like blaming him, and I can't take it. My mama's heart can't take it. I don't like them blaming him. It bothers me. Like, especially because, you've heard them mention the chicken and the egg argument a few times already. And talking about the, and the chicken and the egg thing. When I think about that, I'm like, okay, well, are a lot of these behaviors that he's repeating, or acting out on, things that he's repeating because he's experiencing them at home? And also, kids that are abused have a tendency to be aggressive to others because they lose their power when it comes to their, like they have no power, no self-worth with their parents. So then they act that out to get that back.
Ms. Murad,
So-
you may proceed.
Thank you. Dr. Rappa, you can continue listing those items off.
Okay, the Department of State medical records, records from the
Me too.
Family Care International Clinic, and records from a Vietnam doctor. I had records from Family Counseling Associates, from Kathleen Martin, from 2015 and 2016. I had records from Dr. Rickenbacker from 2019, medical records from other providers, 2019 to 2013. Then I had more from 2014, 2017, and more from 2021. I had Ronan's school records from Immaculate Heart Academy, and there were emails in there between the Ferriters and the school staff. I also had his school records from Basis Academy, and again, emails between the Ferriters and school staff. An April 2022 clinical summary by Kenny Miller, who diagnosed him with reactive attachment disorder. I also had his non-psychiatric medical records from 2009, 2021. I had a memorandum. It was created either by the mom or the dad, I'm not sure who, detailing the efforts that they took to get Ronan help from 2012 all the way up to 2022. I had a photo of a fractured shoulder from NOLA.
Sustained. You can state what you received or reviewed, ma'am, but you can't go into the details of what that document was.
Okay.
You may continue.
A neuropsych testing. I had an incident report from Devereaux Behavioral Health from 2022. I had Baker Act records from JFK and Central Behavioral Health in spring and summer of 2022. Emails between former foster parents and ChildNet. Interview transcripts of Alan Anderson, Kellen McCoy, and Steve Johnson. I had the CPT interviews of Ronan, Fiona, and Nola. I had both the videos and the transcripts. I had Ronan's deposition in this case, also the transcript and the video. Fiona's deposition in this case, the transcript and the video. Ronan's interview with Detective Sharp, the transcript and the video. Documents produced by a state expert. And I also watched several hours of Ring video, both the Ring video inside the room and outside the room in the home. I had the same packet that was sent to the state expert, Dr. Myers, and I had the deposition and trial testimony of Dr. Myers and the trial testimony of Ronan.
Thank you very much. So I want to talk about also what you could not review. Were you able to evaluate Ronan in this case?
No.
And was a request made for that?
Yes.
Sustained. Jury is instructed to disregard the last answer in question. You may continue, Ms. Murad.
Understood. It's fair to say that you were not, well, I will let that go. So you had an opportunity to review Wade Myers's trial testimony, correct?
Yes.
So I want to sort of start with your opinions regarding the Ferriter's actions. So do you have an opinion as to whether the Ferriter's actions were therapeutically correct?
Yes.
What's that opinion?
I think the Ferriter's actions were against anything that we would ever tell someone to do therapeutically.
Is it fair to say that the way the Ferriters handled this situation probably exacerbated Ronan's behavioral issues?
Yes.
But were those behaviors that Ronan had caused by the Ferriters, in your opinion?
No, I don't believe so.
I'll get into the specifics of that in a minute. Does the fact that Tim Ferriter handled the situation with Ronan as inappropriately as he did, does that change any of the opinions that you've come to in this case?
No.
Why not?
Well, I mean, I think that what we see as a child early on that had a lot of difficulty with internal controls. Most children by the age of 5, if you want to kind of push it to 6, have already learned how to control themselves. They can control their behaviors. They don't tantrum. They can control, if they feel like they want to do something, they can control impulses. But I did see through the records that this was a child that had no internal controls. And lots of times when a parent has a child that has no internal controls, they do try to put external controls around that child. This, of course, was beyond the pale. But those external controls are not something that is an unusual thing for a parent to do if they feel like the child is a danger to themselves, others, or is doing something so impulsively and they need to keep an eye on them.
Okay. I want for the jury to establish sort of the timeline that I think is relevant in this case. So I'm going to state Ronan's testimony and let me know if it's correct. And this is the testimony from the trial that you reviewed.
Approach.
Okay, so I'm glad she said that it was out of the scope of anything they would have recommended therapeutically. At least we got that in there. For those of y'all asking about Lucy, she's laying right here in my lap. She's not feeling good this morning. She's I don't know what's wrong with her. She's not eating. She's kind of laying around. Oh, you're so pretty, though. You're so pretty. You're very smart and capable. You're so pretty. Yeah, beyond the pale of anything we would have ever said. Oh, I'm glad they threw that out there, though, at least. But now they're still going to blame him. It's still going to turn into one of those things. Well, they did the best they could. But saying he has no internal controls is, we talked about that a little bit with the ADHD, like you have no impulse control. But I don't know. I just don't want. I'm scared of where they're trying to go with this doctor. And they are pushing that line, y'all. They keep she's asking things that she knows aren't okay, but she also knows that you can't unring that bell. So she's pushing things and she's asking things that she knows are improper, but she wants the jury to hear them. It's like you can push it enough to where the jury hears it, even if they're told to disregard it. You can't really disregard it. But as long as she doesn't cross over that boundary where it's mistrial type stuff, but she's pushing that boundary.
All right, the objection is sustained. Ms. Murad, you can rephrase the question. Thank you.
So I want to go through some of the underlying facts that you relied on in coming to your opinion, okay?
Yes.
And specifically about when locks were placed on Ronan's door, okay? So is it your understanding, or were you assuming this when coming to your opinion, that that Pierce was born on February 28th of 2019?
Yes.
And that a room in the garage in Arizona for Ronan was made about a week prior to that.
Yes.
And that a lock was placed on a room inside the home in Arizona that Ronan lived in while Tracy was pregnant.
Yes.
Given that Pierce was born in late February, is it fair to say that that has to be between about May 2018 and February 2019 at some point?
Yes.
I want to start by talking about some of the facts that Wade Myers relied on in his testimony. You already stated that you reviewed his trial testimony and his deposition, correct?
Yes.
Wade Myers testified that Ronan did not have any substantial behavioral issues before the age of 8 or 9. Without getting into any specifics, is that a true fact based on your review of the records?
Sustained.
Judge, can we approach on this?
You can.
I have a feeling that this entire testimony is going to be like this, like pushing and pulling and we'll see. Let's do a poll.
All right, the objection is sustained without prejudice, Ms. Murad, for you to rephrase.
Without getting into specific acts, have you reviewed evidence that shows that there were in fact behavioral issues prior?
Sorry, I need you to approach again.
This is going to be our entire our entire testimony of this. Oh no, Nancy, I hope you feel better. Nancy fell down the stairs and broke 2 ribs and broken toes. I can't yell or laugh today. I hope you feel better. That's awful. It's awful. Take a shot, do a squat. This is going to take forever. This is where we live now. Whew. Oh yeah, a lot of counting today for our statistician, Marie Moss. A lot of counting today. This is going to be one of those that's we'll spend the majority of our day in sidebars, or at least the majority of this testimony. Sharpen them pencils, Marie Moss. Sharpen them pencils. Oh yeah, that is, yeah, his Australian friend, that is him. And back now, like it's showed him a few times since then, and we can see that it is that one. I'm trying to withhold judgment about that because I'm not in the situation, so I don't know how that would be. But to I mean, he's supporting his friends, I guess. But I don't know that I would or could do the same thing in that situation, but I've never been in the situation, so I can't really say. 87% so far say that this doctor's testimony is not going to help the defense. I think this all just goes back to, this isn't about what he did. This is about what they did. Ronan's not on trial. Timothy is. So I think this just goes back to, you know, no, like it doesn't matter what led up to them doing this. What matters is that they did this. We'll see what they say. I wonder how long he's going to be in town. I mean, he did fly in from Australia for this for some reason. I want to go to Australia too, but have you seen, like, they have like spiders the size of Volkswagens there? And like, what is that noise? I got my window open and something's happening down at the pool or on the beach. Maybe the tiki hut. Can y'all see? Zoom in. Was Ronan diagnosed with any behavioral stuff? I know they did not get him consistent therapy. So that's one of the things that I looked at too, is like a lot of the papers that I looked at didn't have formal diagnosis for some of the stuff that they're claiming. So I'm interested to hear what she says about that and about his medical records, because some of the stuff that they were talking about was not based on visits with him.
Ms. Murad, you may continue.
Thank you. Did you rely on records that showed Ronan had behavioral issues prior to the age of 8 and 9 in coming to your various opinions in this case?
Yes.
Did you also rely on records that showed that Ronan did in fact have school suspensions?
Yes.
Well, they said he had never been suspended
Would
from
you
school.
characterize the time that Ronan spent in his room, would you characterize that as him having experienced solitary confinement for 3 consecutive years?
Not really, in terms of, you think about 3 full years of somebody being in solitary confinement where they're having no stimulation, they're not getting out of their room, nothing is going on like that. So no, I saw videos where he was out of the room, where he was eating with the family, where he was in the cul-de-sac or playing with the dog out back. One, he was helping them clean up the yard. One, he was helping them all move in the house. One, he and Tim were sitting at a table having lunch together. Videos where he's watching football with the family. So no, I didn't see it as, he was locked in a room at the minute he gets home, and then he's never let out of that room until school time.
Were those videos that you reviewed Ring camera videos from the time period in Jupiter?
Yes.
Did you also review videos of Ronan participating in meals with the family?
Yes.
Is there any evidence in the record that Ronan was only provided leftovers to eat?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you rely on any evidence in the record that showed that Ronan was only given leftovers to eat?
Overruled as to that question. You can answer, ma'am.
No, I did not see in records where he was only given leftovers to eat.
Okay, I want to get into your sort of specific opinions at this point. Do you have an opinion as to whether or not Ronan has a lack of inhibition and emotional regulation?
Yes.
What is your opinion as to that issue?
I believe that Ronan struggles and has clinically significant signs of lack of inhibition and emotional regulation.
What did you rely on in coming to that opinion?
Well, there were a number of things, but one thing in particular is he had a neuropsych done in 2022. And so that report was very helpful to me in determining how his brain was functioning.
You said neuropsych. What is that?
Neuropsychological testing is a psychologist that focuses on that focuses on the brain, and the testing then shows skills and abilities that the brain is able to do.
Is neuropsychological testing something that you routinely review in your practice?
Yes,
And is that both your clinical and forensic practice?
yes.
Do you personally administer some neuropsychological tests or the tests that were administered in this case?
Sure. The vast majority of tests that were administered in that case that the neuropsychologist did, I give.
Okay. So can you take us through what the different parts of a neuropsychological test are? And I have it in front of me, should you require your recollection to be refreshed. Would that help?
I think I have it too.
Okay.
So a neuropsychological is very similar to a psychological evaluation. The difference is that they focus more on brain functioning. So they're looking at, how what are their skills, their abilities, and how their brain is functioning. In this particular case, the doctor did get background information. I believe he spoke with mom. He also had records that he reviewed. He gave neuropsych testing. He gave quite a bit of neuropsych testing, scored that testing. And then he did what we call a mental status exam, meaning you have the patient in front of you and you're actually asking them questions, seeing how they reason, seeing if they are logical and relevant, watching their behavior, watching their mood and their affect, and you're trying to determine, where they are at that moment in time in terms of their psychological stability. So he also had that as part of his. And then he wrote up a report telling all the information that he got from the testing, from the interviews, from everything.
You stated that the neuropsychological testing includes information from mom. Is there, how do you determine if that's biased or not?
Well, you're going to have to get information from caretakers. That's just part of what we have to do to get full information. You can absolutely look at the information that you're given and you can see, do records back that up? Is there anything that backs up what I'm being told? When you're giving testing to a parent or a child, that testing has validity scales. So you can tell through that testing if a parent's totally very negative toward a child, overly positive, thinking their kids have, halo and wings. You can tell these things in the testing. So that kind of gives you an idea of if someone's being truthful or not. And the same with the patients, the same with the person that you're interviewing.
What did the validity testing in this neuropsychological evaluation reveal about Tracy Ferriter's responses regarding Ronan?
Let me have your approach.
Again with the approaching. Thank you for gifting memberships. For whatever reason, when the aliens attacked last time, now I can't show comments either. So I'm going to have to try to fix that when we get a break. But it's just one of those days / weeks / lives. That's okay. That's okay. Welcome to the new members. You look good in green. And thank you so much, Holly Mack. I appreciate it. Sidebar, take a shot, do a squat. Look at her. Why is she smiling? Why is she laughing? What's she got to laugh about? Oh, she's like, oh, no, she just remembered. She's like, oh, I'm supposed to look sad. Oops. Let me slip back into looking like a sad mom. Man. I might have to get up in a second and shut the window because I can hear, I don't know if y'all can hear it. Probably not, because I have pretty good like filter stuff on my microphone, but I hear like there are people now starting to go to the pool and starting to aliens. Oh, did I type holy? Oops. Holy mackerel. Oops. I don't have my old lady glasses on. I can't see nothing. Let me see if this is. I still can't show comments. I'm gonna have to restart. Okay. Shereen says y'all can't hear anything but me, so that's good. So you can't hear the youngins out there hollering yet. I have the microphone that's on the laptop muted.
Based on your review of the neuropsychological testing, do you have any concerns about the validity of that testing?
No.
What in the neuropsychological testing has informed your opinion?
There were a couple of things that stood out to me. He did an IQ test. He did an achievement test. The doctor did an IQ test for Ronan, also did an achievement test for Ronan. Those things were pretty standard. He also gave him what is called the brief, which is a test that looks at executive functioning, meaning frontal lobe of the brain, pretty much. How is someone functioning in terms of their brain and their behaviors? That testing was interesting to me. On that test, Ronan scored within the clinically significant range. When we say clinically significant, meaning it's above what somebody would just normally be. So it's clinically significant, and it's something that is going to be kind of on our radar. So on the inhibit scale, he scored clinically elevated, meaning that it's very hard for him to be in control of himself, especially with peers in the classroom. He requires a lot of adult supervision. His self-monitor scale was also clinically elevated, meaning it's very hard for him to understand the effect that his behavior has on others. He doesn't really have any insight into how he presents to others and what he's doing to others with his behavior. He also had a clinically elevated score for emotional control, meaning when he is flooded with emotion, he can't moderate that. He is explosive with his emotion, whether it's rage or screaming or breaking things, whatever. It's very hard for him to manage emotions, and especially anger. And just his regular emotional regulation index was very high. And, this is important to me, and it informs my opinion, because we see when children have been traumatized, and normally very early childhood trauma will create a child that has huge problems with inhibition, emotional control, and they are completely unaware that, everything that's going on around them is because of them.
So you mentioned just now that this is about sort of what happens in early childhood. You also mentioned that these are tests of executive functioning. So let's start with this. When is executive functioning developed in a person?
Well, executive functioning is ongoing, right? So the brain is continuing to grow, and the brain might continue to grow into adulthood until the 20s or in the 30s in some case. So that's a dynamic process. When we see things like in this testing, normally we can relate it back to children in early childhood, because it's early childhood where we learn to manage our emotions, to not act out, to kind of be aware of how we are and what our peers think about us. And so that's a pivotal point where that part of the brain can be damaged, and then we'll start to see testing like this.
Is it your opinion that the results that Ronan had come from early childhood neglect?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Sure. The results that we're seeing on the neuropsychological test, is it your opinion that those resulted from early childhood neglect?
Yes, that is my opinion.
Why is that your opinion?
I feel like that the early childhood neglect that we see in him from, being in a foreign orphanage, and from the records that I reviewed from that orphanage show, not only did he have severe neglect and it was malnourished. They were feeding the children sugar water in one of the records. And there was a very high infant to caretaker ratio, so that caretakers can't take care of all these babies that are in the orphanage. So they didn't get their needs met. He also had scabies on his body that were not treated medically. So this is a child that was severely neglected, We have no idea what happened to him the first 7 months of life before he was put on the orphanage door. We have no idea the neglect or the abuse. But I think that when you see that type of neglect, there is definite brain reaction from that. There's no way that you can have a child that is being neglected. And really, if you think about being ignored or the scabies, like even medically neglected and abused, that would not have some kind of brain fallout because of that.
To state the obvious, is that prior to the Ferriters adopting him?
Yes.
When was this neuropsychological test conducted? If you have it on there.
I will look. October of 2022.
Is the fact that if it was after January 28th, 2022, change your opinion about the fact that this has to do with early childhood neglect for Ronan?
No.
Why not?
I mean, I feel like if this testing had been done, even 2 years before, we probably would have seen a very, very similar pattern. We probably would have even seen a similar pattern when he was younger, because we can tell through the records that this is impulse control, self-monitoring, emotional regulation. These were things he consistently had problems with across all settings.
Is there any evidence in the records that any of the physicians or psychiatrists or social workers that the Ferriters went to recommended a neuropsychological evaluation?
No, I never saw that recommendation.
I now want to talk about another opinion in this case. Do you have any opinions about whether or not Ronan has symptoms that why?
So in order, first of all, I see reactive attachment disorder was diagnosed in the records for him, starting as early as I believe he was 7 or 8. I don't know that at 7 or 8 they had fully diagnosed it, but the therapist was telling the parents, hey, I think this is more than what I thought it was, and I think I think it might be reactive attachment disorder. And then it was more formally diagnosed by a psychiatrist a couple of years after that. So I not only see it in the records, but also in terms of the behaviors that we were seeing and through the records, point to a child that's having problems with attachment and pretty significant behaviors because of it.
So let me stop you there because I want to understand what an attachment disorder is. So what's attachment?
Well, attachment is the most fundamental, basic thing that children need in order to be successful in life, in order to make friends, have intimate partners, being good at their job. Being able to attach to people means that you have stability, you have empathy because you can understand what someone else is feeling, not just yourself. It also helps you establish trust so that you can have a relationship where you can be independent and someone can trust you and you can trust them that they're going to meet your needs if you need it. When children early on don't get that, there's a whole disruption that happens that affects every part of their life because we're social creatures. And if you're not able to trust people and navigate life socially, then there's a problem and it leads to what we call a disorder.
When is attachment developed in a person?
A lot of attachment issues have been looked at, of course, in my field, because it is such an important issue and a lot of things hinge on your ability to attach in a healthy way. Normally what we see is there's a cycle of attachment from the moment that child is born. So what we see in the cycle is a child that is born, and let's say that child is wet or soiled or hungry or cold. That child starts crying. Immediately an adult comes, a caretaker comes, picks up that child, takes care of the child, soothes that child. The child's then able to self-regulate, go back to sleep or whatever they're doing. This cycle occurs thousands of times with parents. If you've ever had a newborn, it's constant. And if you're constantly going after that newborn every time they cry, soothing that newborn, helping that newborn then learns, I have someone I can trust, I have someone I can attach to, and I know that if I get out of control or I need something, there's an adult that's going to come along and that adult is going to help me. Children that do not get this, there's an interruption in that attachment. So you can imagine all the things. They don't trust that anyone will ever take care of them. They don't trust that their needs will be met. They can't see the world from anyone else's perspective. So attachment is a huge thing.
When we talk about attachment, I mean, what separates attachment disorder from a kid that's just like kind of awkward? Like, because it sounds like it's something that affects the personality, but is it just that you kind of end up being like uncomfortable or awkward, or are there other behaviors associated with having an attachment disorder?
When you have a disorder in general, so I'll talk in general first. When you have a disorder, a lot of people, you'll hear people say, oh my gosh, I've got bipolar, I'm so moody, or, oh, that kid's got ADHD, he's so hyper. It's not just something that's at the level that we normally see in life. It's at a level that we think that it is clinically significant, and it's a disorder. It's disrupting their life. It's disrupting the this is something that's hugely problematic, not just to the person that has it, but to the other people that are around that person. And in terms of attachment disorder in particular, what we normally see. So normally you'll get a child that has a reactive attachment disorder. They come out of a very bad environment. They go into a home that's loving and kind and has stability and structure. We normally see that the child begins to get better. So the attachment disorder gets better. There are children who have what we call persistent reactive attachment disorder, where the damage was so severe in childhood that as they get older, we don't necessarily see that damage start to go away. If they're plugged into the right therapies and they know the right places to go, and some of them, have to go to higher levels of care, then we might see some sort of healing, but it's something that they will struggle with, for some of these kids, for their life.
What behaviors are associated with reactive attachment disorder?
Overall,
Go ahead. What behaviors are associated with reactive attachment disorder?
So when you look at, so when we diagnose, as psychologists, as psychiatrists, anyone in the mental health field, we have to use the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So this tells us what signs and symptoms to look for and how to diagnose. So if you're going to look up reactive attachment disorder in the DSM, you're going to just find pretty much a general way of looking at symptoms. So it will be that the child cannot be soothed by their caretaker. The caretaker tries when the child is out of control to soothe them, and the child wants none of it and continues to tantrum. Or the child doesn't go to that caretaker for the caretaker to take care of them. Most children, when they get hurt, run to their parent. No, these children do not. They kind of keep the parent away. So there's kind of a general way of describing reactive attachment disorder when you see it in your practice. However, when you start to look at when people are studying this issue, what you will see is that there are certain behaviors that are kind of indicative of a kid that has reactive attachment disorder. And it would include lying, frequent lying for no good reason, just lies that make no sense. It can be aggression, it can be violence, it can be being mean to animals, being mean to younger children, stealing, hoarding. Food is a big issue for children with reactive attachment disorder. So they gorge on food or they steal food. They're constantly food preoccupied. Some of them don't eat. So it really just depends on, how that is manifesting in each individual child. But it's a significant psychological disorder when you see the symptoms involved of children whose reactive attachment disorder did not get better just because they were put in a loving home.
What, in coming to your opinion that Ronan has behaviors indicative of attachment disorder, what are you relying on? Or can you explain to us how you came to that opinion?
Yeah, so there's multiple records that talk about the behaviors that the family was seeing and dealing with in the home, from psychiatrists, from a treatment provider in 2015, all the way up. All the way up to now, we see these behaviors. So it was pretty well documented that the behaviors that were being seen were indicative of a reactive attachment disorder. The lying, the stealing, especially the food issues, just almost everything. Cruelty to animals or being mean to animals. I'm not going to say cruel like horrible, but being mean to animals, being mean to younger, more vulnerable children. These types of things we do see in his history.
And does that predate, let's say, about May of 2018?
The very first record I saw where the family was really describing the behaviors that they were dealing with was 2015. So I believe he was 7 or 8 at that time.
You talked a little bit about gorging being common for children with attachment disorder. Can you sort of take us through what happens and why that happens?
Well, I mean, I think it's easy to understand. If you are starving as an infant and nobody is feeding you, then your brain has learned that you can be hungry and you're not going to get taken care of. You're not going to get fed. So it becomes a preoccupation with food, a preoccupation on how do I get food? And when I do get food, I want to eat every single thing that I can eat immediately. Or I'm going to hoard food. I'm going to hide food in my room. I'm going to hide food in my backpack so that I'll always have food. It's really very sad because it really is from a brain that was so deprived of basic needs. And now even, into childhood, they're still struggling with that kind of stuff. And we see that with Ronan, a lot of food centric ideas and wanting to get a hold of food. And not having any kind of breaks on food when he does get a hold of something sweet, to the point of even stealing food.
Is that sort of gorging of food and hoarding of food? I mean, is that healthy for a child? Should a parent allow that to continue to happen?
No, you wouldn't allow a child to gorge on food.
Is there any indication in the record that the Ferriters were educated by a psychiatrist or a medical professional about how to handle this gorging issue in a meaningful way?
Sustain, you can rephrase, Ms. Moran.
Sure. Do you have any opinion, and we'll talk about this more in detail, as to whether the Ferriters acted with malice?
Do I have an opinion? Yes.
Okay, what's that opinion?
I do not think that they were maliciously trying to harm their child and make things worse.
I want to talk about that in more detail in a little bit, but as it relates to the food, why do you think that?
Well, I don't understand.
Sure. So I want to talk about your opinion regarding them not having malice and what they did, but as it relates to Ronan and how much he was permitted to eat, what is your opinion about that and the fact that they were not acting maliciously?
Oh, okay. So I think that not only in Ronan's deposition, but also in the deposition of his sister, they do talk about that the mother was very health conscious, that the mother didn't want the children having sugary snacks. They mentioned the snacks that she allowed them to have. And forgive me if I'm wrong, but it was stuff like granola and yogurt and bananas and things like that. The sister testified and her...
Sustained.
Without stating exactly what Fiona said, can you just talk more generally about your opinion?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. So I believe that the mother was trying very hard to make sure that Ronan didn't get too much sugar.
Sustained.
What is your in determining? So I guess not speaking about your beliefs, but what the records actually show, what efforts were made by the Ferriters that makes you believe that it was not malicious?
Overruled, but the witness is instructed not to relate what anyone said to you, just what you reviewed and what drives your opinion.
According to the records, a pediatrician told mom not to give.
Sustained.
Do you have any belief, is it your opinion that the Ferriters were withholding food from Ronan intentionally to harm him?
No.
Is it your opinion that it is related to the fact that Ronan was hoarding food as a result of his earlier condition?
Overruled as to that. You can answer, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. How are children with attachment perceived by adults who are not their parents?
Oh, that's a good question.
Can you restate that question again?
Sure. How are children with attachment perceived by adults who are not their parents?
Sustained.
Can we approach on this, Judge?
Cam,
All right. Well, we heard stuff about him stealing green sprinkles. But it makes sense about the hoarding food stuff. That's kind of one of those things, though, like we were talking about earlier, how a lot of these behaviors that he's, exhibiting and the things that they're talking about are results of, treatment that results of bad treatment. And he's a kid. And they're the adults and they should have known better. This doctor's opinions on this stuff has not changed my mind at this point about why any of this would have been allowed or okay or acceptable. I hear the fighter jets going by.
you may continue, Ms. Murad. The objection is sustained.
Is reactive attachment disorder associated sometimes in children with a level of manipulation?
Approach.
This is they're going to spend the majority of this testimony up there. Dang. Good. Growing boys eat. Yeah. I have a video somewhere of the fighter jets when they go by while I was laying on the beach. It's crazy because they move so fast that I don't know why this keeps doing that. It's StreamYard. My internet is fine. StreamYard keeps messing things up. Oops. What did I just do? There we go. But the jets, they move so fast that you see them and then they're gone by the time you hear them. So fast. So fast, but they're really cool.
All right, the objection is overruled with directions to counsel to rephrase the question.
With reactive attachment disorder, is manipulation by the child who is diagnosed, is that common?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain that to us?
Yes. So these are children that want control over their environments. They don't trust adults. They are, looking for ways not only to seek attention, but also to manipulate, to get their needs met. They feel like they have to manipulate to get their needs met, and rather than being direct about it because their needs were never met directly.
Is your opinion that Ronan also exhibited these behaviors that are indicative of reactive attachment disorder?
Yes.
Explain that to us without getting into anything prior to his age of about 9 or 10.
Okay. Are you asking me what
What
in
behaviors
general,
did
what
Ronan
happened
exhibit?
before 9 and 10?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Dr. Rappa, can you pull the mic a little closer to
I'm
you?
sorry.
So you picked up better. All right,
You
thank
got
you.
it.
No, I'm sorry. I'm asking you to talk about specific behaviors in the record that have led you to that opinion without getting into the specifics of anything prior to the age of 8 or 9. Sorry, 9 or 10.
Thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
Yes, so manipulation by Ronan. He's a very interesting child. So at one point,
I'm going to sustain the objection. You can restate the question and we'll hear the answer again.
Is there, and on what basis, Your Honor?
I'm sorry?
On what basis is it sustained?
Her opinion as to whether he's interesting or not is not relevant to the case.
Okay, without
So-
saying that he's interesting, could you explain what behaviors you reviewed in the record that are helping inform your opinion?
okay. So in the record, there were
Overruled, you can state what you reviewed, ma'am, and how it informed your opinion, but you cannot go into detail about what specifically was said because that's hearsay. So you have to be able to answer the question posed by your attorney without disclosing specifically what was said by someone outside of this courtroom.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You understand that instruction?
I think.
All right, well, we'll see if you can
Yeah,
follow.
yes, I know.
I think.
He said, we'll see if you can follow
Go
it.
ahead.
Thank you, Allie.
What
Gave
records
Tennessee.
did you review that indicated that?
School records, also records of when he would go to the doctor or saw the psychologist or psychiatrist.
Did you have an opportunity to review the video deposition of Ronan?
Yes,
And that was about 5 hours.
yes.
Is there anything about the way in which Ronan presents that also is indicative of attachment disorder?
I mean, I don't know that you would look at him and you would say that the way you present is, an attachment disorder. But the things that I noticed in the deposition or that were kind of flags for me as a psychologist, what he talks about, he can talk about it in an intellectual way, but he doesn't necessarily talk about it in an emotional way. So he kind of gives you facts without necessarily having that emotional congruence with the facts. One of the things that is interesting to me is that during the deposition, he was pretty blunt affect. He doesn't have a affect on his face, whether it's, joy or anger or anything, it's kind of blunted. However, during times where he would talk about things that he had done, such as giving beer to his younger brother, and to see the effects of alcohol on young children, he started giggling. Or he would laugh when he would talk about that he went into his sister's classroom.
Overruled. You can only say what his observations were and his response, but not what he said specifically. So overruled.
Go ahead, Dr. Rappa.
So he would laugh at inappropriate things that he had done. But other than that type of laughter, he was pretty blunted in terms of his affect.
Why? I think you called it congruence. What do you mean by congruence?
It's really important when we're communicating with people that we are congruent. So what we're feeling is what we're showing to that person. If you're feeling something and not necessarily showing it, then people can kind of pick up that you're incongruent, something is going on with you, and it leads to lack of trust. So it's important. Congruence is important. It's also important because it makes some. And I know that you are someone who what you say is exactly what you feel, then I can trust you and I can predict your behavior towards me. When people are not congruent, you can't necessarily predict their behavior towards you because what they're saying and what they're actually feeling are two different things. So the congruence is a huge issue in relationships.
Why is that concerning for children in particular?
In
That lack of congruence.
A lack of congruence in children, one of the things that an adult role is to teach children what you're feeling is what you need to be speaking, in a respectful way, but you need to speak your feelings. If they don't have that, then the child is an unpredictable child because the child can parrot back to you what they know you want to hear, but they're not necessarily changing anything internally.
What is the treatment for an attachment disorder? What are the treatments?
There are treatments for attachment disorder. There are also some treatments for attachment disorder that are very off the cuff and not good treatments, and nobody really, and professionals would recommend them. But the treatment right now for attachment disorder, most people would treat it as a trauma-based disorder, and they would do trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy or regular cognitive behavioral therapy. There's dialectical therapy. There's certain therapies that are known to work with children that have attachment issues.
Were any of those ever recommended to the Ferriters?
Sustained.
Or do you have an opinion as to whether the Ferriters acted with malice when it comes to the treatment of attachment disorder?
Yes.
I'm about to start throwing things. I'm about to start
All right,
throwing
so
things.
the court is reconsidering its prior ruling on the question of whether there were any recommended treatments. Ms. Murad, you can ask the witness that question with respect to her review of the records that she had presented to her in this matter. But ma'am, just so you know, you're only able to answer that question with respect to the records you reviewed. You're not allowed to get into that with respect to do that. Okay?
Thank you, Your Honor. Based on the records that you reviewed and coming to your various opinions in this case, is there any evidence that the Ferriters were recommended those treatments that you just mentioned?
No.
Is there any evidence in the records that you reviewed that they were recommended inpatient treatment for attachment disorder?
No.
Is there any evidence in the record that the Ferriters were recommended to go to a specialist?
Clear, Ms. Moore. Talking about the records that she reviewed, not in the record in the global sense of this proceeding.
Just the ones you have. Yes. All right. I want to go into, Your Honor, my next opinion does require me to approach. I'm wondering if it's a good time for a break.
Yeah, it is good because we've been going about an hour and a half this morning. So we'll take a break, 15-minute break.
I am going to, while we're on break real quick, I'm going to try to reboot everything so I can restart StreamYard. My internet is showing that it's great, but StreamYard keeps coming in and out. So I'm going to reboot while we're on break.
All right, everyone may be seated.
Could we just do it?
We can do it.
Here. So, Judge, in my opinion, the court has sort of made a preliminary ruling on this, but I wanted to readdress it before I asked Dr. Rappa. So, in the cross-examination, actually, I think it was in the direct or redirect examination of Wade Myers opined that when you remove a issues with their attachment. So specifically, and we listened to this yesterday, so Wade Myers agreed that Ronan has probably an attachment disorder from his early childhood when he was adopted. He then said that it was, quote, brought back by the Ferriters. And he then said that if he is placed in a attachment issues or placed in a different situation or environment, you expect to see an improvement in their behavior. And so I believe, based on the records that Dr. Rappa has reviewed, that at the very least, the defense should be able to counter that position to show that that improvement has not in fact happened, because there is an issue here of the persistent reactive attachment disorder and how the Ferriters couldn't have really done anything to improve it. And it is direct rebuttal to what the state's own expert testified to. So I would like to get into that, and I'm sure the state will be objecting.
All right, so Ms. Coakley, make sure you use a mic and say what your position is.
Yeah, I mean, the state would object. I think that there is a fundamental difference between saying generally this is how it is addressed, which is what Dr. Rappa has already testified to, that generally how it's addressed is that it focuses on the parenting in a nurturing, safe parenting environment. There's a fundamental difference between that testimony and saying that that would have solved it in this case, which is not what his testimony was. He testified generally. Beyond that, it's much more complex and nuanced than the defense wants to make it seem. It's not an automatic solution. I don't think any psychiatrist or psychologist would say that, especially after 3 years of additional trauma perpetrated by the defendants, then to go into every single thing that has occurred to the child after.
So what is the legal basis of your objection? Is it foundation? Is it relevancy?
It's improper character evidence, Your Honor. The child in this case was cured after being removed from the parents is not a relevant determination.
Let's see if this helps. See, this is how you know it's not my internet, because the laptop is still fine. And the laptop is on the same internet. All right, let's see. Try this again. Let me get it pulled up. Sometimes I love StreamYard and sometimes I hate StreamYard. But don't say that too loud. People get mad. It's still not helping. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I mean, I don't even. It's working for now.
Criminal charge here. And so whether or not he was able to or continue to have behaviors after they were removed, it's not relevant to the determination of the defendant's intent or knowledge in this case, or whether or not they committed a criminal act of child abuse.
All right, final remarks on it, Ms. Murad. And I'll help you out with at least the concern I have is I think it's completely irrelevant whether the child gets well or not after he's removed from the home, because I agree with the state's position that whether the child gets better or not does not decide the issue of whether the treatment and the conduct of the parents in dealing with the child prior to the child's removal was appropriate or not to the circumstances. You've testified as to the circumstances that, or you've had your witness testify as to the circumstances that existed while the child was at home, and that was with the reactive attachment disorder. So that's appropriate. But now, and that's relevant because that's what they're dealing with in real time, and it guides and determines their conduct, their response to a minor child having reactive attachment disorder. But what happens after the child's removed, I have a real difficult time connecting the dots because it's irrelevant to the parent's conduct that they pursued while the child was with them and while they were dealing with the issue. So that's my major concern, is it's just not relevant. And why should I change my pretrial ruling already made in this case that I wasn't going to allow this area of an opinion and conduct to be looked at?
So the reason I think the court should reconsider its ruling is because the state has made it relevant. Everything that the court is saying in the state's sort of argument in the second half of their argument is the same thing that we litigated in motions in limine. We are now in a different posture. The state could have instructed their expert, do not say anything that could create an issue with what's happened after the fact. We all do that with motion and limines, and we instruct our witnesses, don't testify like this, don't bring this up. Now it has become relevant. So the reason it's not improper character evidence, as the court knows, is only inadmissible to the extent that it goes to show propensity. That's not what we're doing here. They have had an expert, a doctor, testify that when you remove a child from that situation, they will get better. And he may have said that generally, but we're in a case here about Ronan's behavior and whether or not the Ferriters are guilty or not guilty. Now, I understand the state's position as to, these are perpetrated by the Ferriters, their version of the theory of their case is not, I do not have to abide by that. I certainly understand that there are relevance objections and everything, but their version of their case, they can present. I don't have to present that version.
Okay. I recall well the underpinnings of my ruling pre-trial on this, and I can tell you that my ruling was informed by much more than just a relevancy consideration, but it was also informed by significant case law that had been presented to me regarding the privacy interest of the victim in this case. And it was because of that and a substantial amount of authority that weighed in heavy favor of not allowing this type of information to be pursued with a victim in general, but a child victim in particular. So I'm going to sustain the state's objection, maintain my pretrial ruling and my order in limine on this. So with that, I'm going to give, do you need anything else? I'm going to give you a break until for you to
Can I
continue.
just proffer the questions?
You can proffer the question. That'll be fine. Go ahead, Ms. Murad.
Thank you. Wade Myers opined that when you remove a child from an abusive environment, you expect to see improvement in their behavior. In general, do you agree with that? We're just
Yes.
proffering, so you have to answer it. When would you not agree? Are there circumstances where that's not the case?
Sure. If the child has real significant psychiatric problems, then we're not going to necessarily see it remit just because they're put in a different placement.
In this particular case, is there evidence that Ronan has in fact improved since his removal from the Ferriter home?
I'm just going to object because
This is proffer.
I know it's proper, but we're privileges, and so now to put it on a televised.
I think that's a fair objection. Let me have both sides approach.
Trying to get us back to where we were. They're not.
It is to the defense to do a written proffer with a confidential filing, because the court has found previously that the minor victim's treatment post removal from the home is protected information, and it would violate his privacy interest to have that disclosed publicly. So I'm maintaining that ruling, maintaining that protection that I originally ordered. However, I also acknowledge the defense's right to put on a proffer of what evidence it would have submitted, but for my ruling, and I will allow that to be done in a way that it is not public at this point. You can do a sealed proffer for filing that will become part of the record going forward. Ms. Murad, anything else before we've chewed up the break, but I'm going to still give you 5 or 10 minutes. Anything from state? All right, so we're going to take a brief recess. Ma'am, you can step down, stretch your legs, but during the break, you're not to discuss your testimony with anyone. You understand all that? All right. Thank you. Court will be in recess for another 10 minutes.
All right, so we're caught up. I rebooted StreamYard. We'll see how it goes. If it starts kicking me off again, we're all just going to take naps and then reconvene at a later time. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. I guess StreamYard did some kind of update 3 days ago, and so now I'm having, and for 3 days now I've been having problems. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. And I guess other people are too. I know yesterday something I was watching, he got kicked off. I have no idea why there's so many problems. Mary P, you have missed a bunch of alien problems. So there's that. And there's testimony. This is kicking me out. I'm not even going to try anymore. Okay. I don't know. I don't know what's happening, and it's not fixing itself. And I all right. I don't know what's going on, but it's not getting fixed. Let me do this. Because we're going to miss a bunch of stuff if okay, mine keeps messing up. I'm going to end this stream. We'll come back after lunch. Let me see if I can get this figured out. But Mel is covering this. I'm going to send y'all over there so you can watch it if you want to watch it live. Otherwise, as soon as I get this fixed, I'll come back. But I'll definitely be back hopefully after lunch. But I can't get anything to happen. So I will see. I'm going to send you all to ICADML if you want to watch it live. If not, we'll try to catch up. I'll come back, hopefully have it fixed by lunch break, and we can catch up at lunch and after. So we'll see how it goes.